Before the company's IPO, the intern suggested treating foreign guests with milk tea. My boyfriend said, "That's quite creative, don't always suppress new ideas from juniors." The shareholders chimed in, "Milk tea is so down to earth. Investors aren't the Empress Dowager, after all." I didn't say a word, I just quietly switched it to black tea and a fruit platter before the meeting started. The project succeeded, but she went live crying about how I bullied her and stole the credit. Her boyfriend said nothing, the barrage of comments mocked her, and the hashtag flooded social media, "Joanna, get out of the workplace." I died in a gasoline fire, my mother passed from a heart attack, and my father was hit by a car with no one daring to help. Given a second chance at life, I simply nodded and said, "Sure, remember to add extra sugar." Then I quit my job and took all the investments with me. I think this foreign guest reception doesn't necessarily need to be too formal. Vivian spoke softly, holding a tablet as she stood by the conference table, dressed in a white dress with clear, bright eyes. A trendy domestic brand like milk tea is both relaxed and distinctive, it can showcase our company's youthful energy. As she spoke, she clicked through a PowerPoint presentation showing images of takeout milk tea, paired with small cakes and cookies, almost like an advertisement for office afternoon tea. I stared at the screen, my face unreadable, but my fingers slowly clenched beneath the table. I had attended this very meeting in my previous life. When she mentioned milk tea, I immediately objected, explaining that executives in the group had diabetes or dairy allergies and shouldn't consume it. Her eyes instantly reddened as she asked, "Does Joanna not like me very much?" My boyfriend Lucas shot me a cold look and said, "Joanna, don't be so petty." After the meeting, she tearfully streamed a live broadcast, accusing me of throwing my weight around and stealing her proposal. That video racked up over 1 million likes. Later, the group project succeeded, the actual credit was mine, yet she took all the spotlight. Meanwhile, I was branded as the ruthless female CEO who suppressed creativity. What followed was Lucas breaking up with me, the company's purge, the overwhelming online attacks, and that bucket of gasoline. I died unrecognizable in the flames. My father collapsed on the spot while collecting my remains and passed away from a brainstem hemorrhage. Mother looked at the line on the cremation certificate, her heart suddenly failed, and by the time the neighbors found her, she had already stopped breathing. And she, Vivian, holding everything of mine, walked onto the stage in custom haute couture and said, "Thank you, Joanna, for teaching me how to be a person in the workplace." I was reborn. Reborn at this meeting, she spoke again, saying she wanted to treat the foreign guests with milk tea. I stared at the corner of her mouth. That faint, elusive smile. She thought I would intervene just like in my previous life. But this time I remained silent. "I think it's a great idea," I interrupted her presentation, smiling. "Bubble tea is youthful, trendy, and creative. Vivian has put a lot of thought into this." She froze. An eerie silence filled the conference room. I continued, "When hosting leaders, of course, we should showcase our unique style." Lucas glanced at me, the corners of his lips curling slightly, as if he had finally witnessed me acting sensibly. "If Joanna says so, then let's go with your plan," he said. Everyone nodded in agreement, chiming in their support. "The youngsters' plan is brilliant. We shouldn't always stick to those old-fashioned British afternoon teas. Right? Who doesn't love milk tea?" I glanced around at these old friends seated around the conference table, the very ones who had roasted me over the fire in our previous lives, all under the guise of acting in the company's best interests. "This time, I'll let you burn yourselves." I stepped out, picked up my phone, and dialed a number. "Sean," I said softly, "you mentioned before about poaching me with a high salary, offering shares and decision-making authority. Is that still on the table?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by an easygoing laugh. "Absolutely. Joanna, if you're ready to jump ship, I'll catch you anytime." "Good. Then let's talk business." In a previous existence, Vivian also stood at the center of the conference room. Dressed in a white dress, with a ponytail, holding a tablet, she delivered a presentation on milk tea marketing, her smile innocent and her voice gentle. I couldn't help but remind her, we're hosting executives from the Sino-Foreign group, not Billy content creators. She paused, pursing her lips slightly, her voice softening. Does Joanna not like me very much? Lucas sat beside her and coldly retorted, are you targeting her? I was taken aback. He said, aren't you just jealous that she's young, articulate, and well-liked? The conference room fell silent, and other shareholders gradually chimed in. What's wrong with young people having creative ideas? It's just that we older folks don't understand their world. At that moment, I understood. As long as you're right, but not delicate-looking enough or unwilling to play the victim, no one will stand by your side. And she would. That night, she started a live stream. The title read, The intern wanted to serve milk tea to foreign guests. After I agreed, she panicked. #I was forced to cry at work #. She sat in the rented apartment, half her clothes soaked, her eyes red and swollen, with a deliberately dim and shabby background. She cried and said, I suggested using milk tea to entertain foreign guests, but our deputy manager scolded me in front of everyone, calling me an idiot. I don't get it, can't young people be creative? The live stream chat exploded. How dare they bully an intern like this nowadays? A confirmed case of workplace PUA. That VP must be sick. I'm officially reporting Joanna, she's totally unfit to be a female executive. Is she just saying sour grapes because she can't get any? I had just finished an overtime meeting that evening when I opened Weibo and saw myself trending at #1. It was my birthday. I opened my social media feed when a new post popped up. Lucas updated his status, I hope no hard-working intern will ever be trampled on with malice. The image shows a cup of milk tea and Vivian's tear-reddened eyes. I messaged, what do you mean? He replied with a you can't figure it out yourself, and then sent a voice message, icy and emotionless. Joanna, I don't think we're compatible anymore. Frantic, I rushed to his office, wanting to ask him, what exactly did I do wrong? Sitting at his desk, his expression remained blank. The project is already successful. Vivian was well prepared. The company now only needs a symbolic executive, not someone with so many emotions like you. Symbol? I gritted my teeth. Are you saying my 5 years of building this company with you has been reduced to just a symbol? Can you calm down? He said impatiently. Look at yourself, you're acting like a shrew. That day, I was fired. The termination letter was thrown in my face. I became the poster child for workplace toxicity in the news. With media spreading rumors that I had a chaotic personal life, exploited subordinates, and was a hysterical old career woman with a pathological need for control. Someone went to my hometown and filmed a vlog at my mother's hospital, saying, what kind of decent person could come from a family like this? My father couldn't stop them and was so furious he collapsed at the door from a cerebral hemorrhage. On the day I was doused with gasoline, it was the 27th day of the 12th lunar month, just before the new year. Cornered at the entrance of an old warehouse, a crowd accused me of being a capitalist lapdog and an accomplice to oppressing young people to death. Pinning me to the ground, they poured half a bucket of oil over me. Are you the one who killed Vivian? How dare you still live? I struggled and shouted, you're insane, she's not dead, she lied to you. No one believed me. Burn him. Someone lit the fire. As the flames engulfed me, the only thing I remembered was that I was wearing a newly bought beige trench coat that day. My mother had scrimped and saved to buy it for my birthday. 1 second before I burned, my phone screen lit up. The last voice message from my dad said, sweetheart, Daddy's coming to bring you home. But he never made it. He was killed instantly when a speeding car ran a red light and hit him on his way. As for my mom, upon hearing the news of my death, she locked herself in the room that same night, slit her wrists in the bathtub, and never woke up. On the day of cremation, no one came to claim my body. It remained at the funeral parlor for 3 days before being sent for mass cremation by the Civil Affairs Bureau. They said, unclaimed bodies don't need names. Vivian's livestream crying session racked up tens of millions of views, making her the representative victim. Lucas took over the company, declaring he would purge the toxic executives. The entire internet is cursing me, saying I deserve to die, that it serves me right. My death was worthless. Until now, when I was reborn and returned, hearing her say once again, I suggest serving milk tea to the foreign guests. I looked at her and said with a smile, great, let's do it that way. Joanna, are you sure you won't attend such an important report meeting? Secretary Sue stopped me, holding a thick stack of documents in her arms. Wearing a black trench coat, I remained calm and said, didn't Vivian say she wanted to lead a formal reception? Let's give her this opportunity to practice. Sue gave me a complicated look and whispered, Lucas has been favoring her too obviously. Everyone's been gossiping. You might be sidelined. I curled the corner of my lips, marginalize me? He'd better check if he's capable first. I pushed the door open and walked into the meeting room. Vivian was already standing at the center, dressed in a light pink professional suit. Holding a notebook, she said softly, this is a crucial opportunity for us to liaise with the top executives of Group D. I've outlined the specific reception plan, please review it. The first slide of the PPT bore a bold title, Creative Reception Plan Inspired by Gen Z. Below it was a glaringly bright image of a bubble tea logo, practically blinding. I plan to set up a milk tea buffet during the reception break, featuring flavors like jasmine green tea, peach cheese tea, and full cup grapefruit, with customizable sweetness levels. For snacks, we'll serve burst cakes and candied orange peels to showcase our team's vibrancy. As she spoke, she glanced back at me, whether to show off or test my reaction, I couldn't tell. Sitting in the last row, I flipped through documents while leisurely sipping warm water. A senior executive from Group D has just entered stage 3 diabetes. Do you intend to label the sugar content in your milk tea? I spoke calmly without looking up. Vivian paused for a moment, then immediately replied, we can order sugar-free ones. Sugar-free milk tea, sweetened base powder, whipped sweet cream topping, do you plan to explain each ingredient to them one by one? The project counterparts are from the Singapore branch, culturally more Western-oriented. Do you really think they'd appreciate your fruit syrup dessert? I will emphasize it during the presentation, she said stiffly. Besides, not every foreign guest rejects milk tea. We can also prepare 2 options. Vivian has already prepared very thoroughly. Don't always discourage a newcomer, Lucas interrupted me, his tone clearly biased. I smiled and looked up at him. What's Joanna's opinion? Vivian bit her lip and looked at me pitifully. I met her gaze and smiled slowly. My opinion is, I glanced around the room with a gentle tone, the proposal is excellent and very creative. If no one has any objections, let's proceed as she suggested. An inexplicably relaxed atmosphere filled the meeting room. Someone murmured softly, Joanna has become much gentler now. Indeed, not as assertive as before. Young people still need opportunities. I just have no interest in cleaning up your messes. After the meeting, I took the documents and walked into my office, locking the door behind me. The phone has already received a text from Sean, materials received. We'll internally review the cooperation framework, with project approval possible as early as next week. I sent him a briefing PPT, signed not by Joanna, but by the newly registered YIQI planning studio. And the shareholder structure of this studio has just undergone hidden control changes. Superficially unconnected, but in reality, I hold everything. Vivian is still in the conference room coordinating the milk tea self-service with the admin department, smiling like a perfect little angel. That evening, Lucas sent a WeChat message. Vivian is still too naive and easily gets nervous. As a senior, you should guide her appropriately. I chuckled as I read this. He actually expects me to teach Vivian? Does he think she's not digging her own grave fast enough? I replied with a simple got it. Then, I swiftly compiled her live streaming account details, past controversies, and records of private gigs and commercial performances into an anonymous report and sent it to the group's disciplinary committee. In my previous life, her live streams were what got me publicly condemned across the internet. This time, I'll let her taste what it's like to face a full-scale online backlash. In front of the meeting room door, I took out my phone and dialed Sean's number. "Hello, Joanna." His laughter on the other end carried a tone of sober discipline. Leaning against the window, I whispered, "Let me tell you something in advance. I'll bring the project over, and I'll make sure the other side ends up completely dead." "Don't worry," Sean said. "You just need to collect the bodies. I'll take care of setting the fire." The day of the project meeting was overcast. 3 executives from D Group arrived at our C Group's headquarters in a private car. Even the receptionist who greeted them with an umbrella could sense their displeasure. It wasn't personal. These men, nearing 50, have long adhered to strict diets, monitoring sugar, avoiding fats, and guarding against allergies. They had absolutely no interest in the youthful, milk tea marketing approach. At the conference room door, Vivian, wearing a bright yellow dress, crouched down to arrange the newly set-up milk tea self-service station. "I chose low-sugar versions for all the milk teas," she turned to the admin and said, "but the colors must be photogenic. Strawberry matcha, cheese grapefruit, these must be included, and the toppings should be generous for good shots." After half an hour of meticulous arranging, the milk teas and mini cakes were finally lined up like an afternoon tea display. Clapping her hands, she turned to Lucas with a smile. "Lucas, take a look. Is there anything else we need to add?" Lucas glanced over and nodded, "Looks good." Several senior executives nearby exchanged glances, with a hint of hesitation on their faces. "These refreshments." Someone murmured quietly, "The leader has a sensitive stomach, won't they be too sweet?" "It's fine," she said. She chose the low-sugar option. With so many reporters here, don't embarrass the newcomer." As soon as the time came, the senior leadership of D Group entered the room. Before they could even take their seats, Vivian greeted them with a smile. "Welcome, welcome, esteemed guests. We've prepared some creative snacks favored by the younger crowd here. We hope you'll enjoy them." The 3 exchanged glances but said nothing, picking up their cups out of politeness. Their expressions changed slightly after taking a sip. Richard, seated in the middle, a classic stage 3 diabetes patient, suddenly turned red, clutched his stomach with one hand, and gripped the table corner with the other, frowning. "Who prepared this stuff? What is this?" The administrative team froze. "Why is it so sweet? Did you mix in condensed milk?" The female assistant nearby quickly handed him a tissue, whispering for him not to get angry. The investor beside them frowned while wiping his mouth. "Are you serious about this? We're here to discuss funding, not to join your company's afternoon tea team building." Richard immediately blocked the QR code under the milk tea. "My kids won't be ordering from this place either. What a disaster." The atmosphere grew subtly tense. Vivian's face instantly turned pale. She nervously explained, This is the low-sugar version we selected. We tested all the ingredients in advance." "Low sugar?" One investor glared at her. "And you let them drink this mess? Are you trying to send us all to the hospital?" The chill in the room was palpable. Lucas stood up, attempting to smooth things over. "Don't be upset, everyone. This is Vivian's first time hosting a reception, so she might lack experience." "Is she your fiancé or your assistant?" Daniel, sitting at the far right, glared coldly at him. "I don't care who she is. Today is an important collaboration for the group. Treating investors like this, are you making a joke out of us?" The atmosphere instantly froze. The media happened to capture this moment, with camera shutters clicking incessantly. Several shareholders beside them looked awkward, until one gritted their teeth and spoke up. "Take away the milk tea and replace it," quickly switched to Joanna's plan from last time. Before I could finish, Richard stood up, picked up his folder, and said, "Never mind. I won't review the project for now." "This is your attitude? I'm not interested." The other 2 executives also stood up. "Since you executives don't care, there's no need to talk. We're not here for milk tea." As the words finished, the 3 immediately turned and walked out. The moment the door closed, the meeting room fell into absolute silence. The reporters hesitated about whether to continue filming, while several shareholders rushed out pale-faced to chase after him. "Richard, please don't go." She wasn't really in charge of the project. We misunderstood. Meanwhile, Vivian, who remained standing in place, shakily tugged at Lucas' sleeve and whispered, "I didn't mean to. I checked their health records. I really just wanted to try something new." Lucas didn't look at her, his cold gaze fixed only on the still steaming cup of milk tea. After a long silence, he spoke coldly, "Then what about Joanna? Shouldn't she be here to host?" She withdrew herself. "She said she wanted to step down from leading. She agreed to let me take over." Vivian's voice grew quieter. Because everyone was looking at her. From start to finish, all of this was something she had strived for herself. She took the position, proposed the plan herself, executed it herself, and now when trouble arises, no one can cover for her. I turned on the conference room live stream from my office just in time to see the investor stand up. Richard's line, "We didn't come here for milk tea," nearly made me laugh out loud. I clicked open the message from Sean. "They've already notified us of their withdrawal of investment intent. I've received the relevant documents. Congratulations, step 1 is complete." I replied, "It's still early, there's more to come later." I put on my trench coat, gathered my things, and walked out of the office. Secretary Sue saw me and panicked, "Joanna? Where are you going?" "The board is about to hold an emergency meeting." My steps were light, my tone gentle. "I'm not Joanna anymore, remember? I stepped back from leadership long ago. What happened today has nothing to do with me." 15 minutes later, an emergency interim executive meeting of our .C group was hastily convened. In the conference room, the shareholders' faces were ashen. On the table lay the milk tea cup Richard had slammed down, coconut jelly scattered all over the floor. The investment was pulled? Do you have any idea that money was what all of us put up by taking out mortgages and betting our entire cash flow on? If this isn't resolved today, I'll sue Lucas for dereliction of duty. Who approved you changing the plan without authorization? Several retail shareholders who had previously only cared about dividends also erupted in outrage. I told you we shouldn't let an intern take the lead, but none of you listened. Young people have creativity? One sip of that milk tea nearly sent me to the hospital. If the company goes under, can you afford to compensate, Lucas? Lucas sat at the head of the table, hands clasped, his expression grim. Vivian sat beside him, her face pale, eyes darting nervously. She tried to stand up and explain, "No. I was just assisting at first. Joanna was the one leading." "What nonsense are you talking?" a vice president sneered on the spot. "Joanna signed the withdrawal from project leadership agreement long ago. You fought for this yourself, and now you're trying to shift the blame after causing trouble?" Vivian clenched her teeth. "But didn't you just say you'd definitely impress the investors?" "You sure did, just not the way anyone expected." She was trembling all over. The same people who had just called her Vivian had now completely changed their tone. "I didn't show up. My office was already emptied, my access card deactivated, computer wiped clean, not even a signing pen left behind. She can't not come." Lucas suddenly stood up, pushed back his chair, and shouted angrily, "She can't run away at a time like this. She's one of our founding shareholders, she has a responsibility to fix this. If she doesn't solve it, don't blame me." "Blame you for what?" A calm, gentle voice came from the doorway. I walked in wearing a beige trench coat, my hair meticulously coiled without a strand out of place, my expression detached. I held a file in my hand and placed it leisurely on the conference table. "This is the equity transfer application I submitted last week. The process is complete, and I am officially stepping down from my position on the R.C board of directors." Everyone turned their gaze toward the document. A bright red notary seal was stamped in the lower right corner, sealing every word irrevocably. "From today onward, I am a free person. Whatever happens in the company, I have neither the right nor any interest in participating." Lucas quickly approached, his voice low yet explosive. Joanna, do you know what kind of occasion today is? Are you just going to stand by and watch us get into trouble? Watching you get into trouble, isn't that just normal? He gave a start. The meeting room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Vivian rushed out to grab me. You can't leave. You clearly knew the risks of this project. Did you do this on purpose? I smiled. Correct. She froze. I slowly stepped closer to her, staring into her eyes, speaking word by word. The milk tea idea was yours, the slides were written by you, the reception process was arranged by you. You wanted to shine, to take my seat, didn't you? Then sit tight, don't cry. I look around at these people, the ones who stayed up with me until 4 a.m., yet also took the opportunity to kick me when I was down after my incident. All of them competed to take over Vivian's PPT, criticizing my lack of vision. And now? Every one of them is a nervous wreck. One final reminder, I say quietly. I've already taken D Group's investment resources with me. From now on, they'll only deal with me. I've started fresh, founded the Ichi Planning Studio. Right now, we're in talks with Helios Capital about future collaboration. You'd better stop trying to contact Richard, they've already blacklisted your email. I turned and walked away, saying, don't thank me. I'm not kicking you while you're down, just giving you an extra push. This time, don't even try to climb back out. Silence fell behind me. Vivian screamed hysterically, you'll die a horrible death. I didn't look back. As I stepped out of the RC building, the rain began to fall. The wind howled, lifting the hem of my trench coat. I pulled open the passenger door and slid into the understated black sedan. Sean was waiting for me, dressed in a gray suit with his shirt buttons meticulously fastened, his bony fingers tapping lightly on the steering wheel. You look good, he said casually as he started the car. Proceeding with the original plan to withdraw? I nodded, pull out everything, freeze the marketing budget, unblock the accounts, take the resources with us. He paused for a moment, glanced at me, held back? I turned my eyes slightly, haven't even started yet. He laughed out loud. You know, he said slowly, I used to think you were the type who disdained scheming. I gazed at the raindrops splattering outside the window, my tone indifferent, I do disdain it. But if someone insists on digging their own grave, I can't help that. 17 Planning, formerly an established small studio I founded during my college startup days. Last week, I had already registered it as an independent corporate entity, with Helios Capital holding a 51% stake and my personal ownership at 49%, granting me actual control and veto power. 17 quietly went live 2 hours before the R.C. incident. When the R.C. investment fell through and news broke about founder Joanna's departure, the media simultaneously released another piece of information. 17 Planning, a new brand under Helios Capital led by former R.C. core founder Joanna, secures strategic investment from D Group. The internet exploded instantly. Isn't this the female executive who got exposed by an intern's livestream? Wasn't she fired? No, she left voluntarily. The company's investment failed afterwards. She's back in the game? And directly secured funding from Group D? What's this woman's background? From start to finish, it seems like she was deliberately waiting for them to crash. Sorry, but right now I just want to stand by her. Meanwhile, over at the R.C. building, chaos had completely taken over. The shareholder representatives have already demanded an audit. The CFO is on leave and unreachable, while the company's accounts have been frozen. All the media are waiting outside to film, more here for the spectacle than to discuss cooperation. Messages flooded the board's WeChat group. Meanwhile, in the meeting room, Lucas smashed his third glass. She can't leave, he roared. How dare she walk away so cleanly? No one dared to speak up. We're the ones who built her up, he panted. The projects, resources, connections, it was all thanks to my support. Could she just kick us out and start fresh right now? All because of some messed up snacks? As soon as he finished speaking, Vivian pushed the door open. She was completely drenched, holding her phone with reddened eyes. Lucas, people online are cursing me out. I didn't do anything wrong, she set me up on purpose. I had no idea the milk tea wasn't suitable. You have to help me. She kept saying you have to help me, as if it were a given. Lucas stared at her, his eyes for the first time showing a cold emptiness. Didn't you say you could take her place? Vivian paused, taken aback. Now, are you qualified to sit in that position? Her voice trembled, are you blaming me now? Everything I did, wasn't it all because of you? You told me she was emotionally unstable, you said she was disobedient, said she was stubborn. You said you wanted me to stay in her place. I believed you, and now everyone is cursing me, I've been blacklisted, R.C is about to go bankrupt, and now you blame me? She was nearly hysterical. Outside the conference room, someone stopped to watch. Lucas stood up, his voice terrifyingly low. Do you think I have time to listen to your nonsense right now? Look at this mess today. The media, shareholders, the disciplinary committee. Do you really think I have time to deal with you? Vivian stared at him in disbelief. You want to use me as the scapegoat? Who told you to take credit you didn't earn? His tone was as casual as if discussing the weather. Shouldn't you take responsibility for what you stole? Joanna didn't cry when she left. Why can't you hold on? Only then did Vivian understand. She wasn't Lucas's new lover. She was just a tool. A prop to help him transition, discarded into the trash at the first mistake. Her whole body trembled, and her phone fell to the ground. The rebuttal live script she had prepared for 3 days remained unsent as the screen went black. I, on the other hand, sat in the conference room of 17 planning. White walls, a projector, sunlight spilling over the large table, outside the window a clear sky after the rain. Sean tossed the contract onto the table. D Group strategic investment funds have arrived. Joanna, it's your call now. I nodded lightly, good. Next, it's time for us to counter-harvest. Weibo Hot Search Rank 3. Hashtag R.C Group intern Vivian responds to the PR disaster hashtag. Hashtag Milk Tea Girl cries over being forced to take the blame hashtag. The live stream had been online for less than 10 minutes, and the chat was already exploding. Vivian wore a gray knit sweater and appeared without makeup, her eyes red and swollen. Her voice choked with sobs. I know I don't deserve this opportunity, but I'm just an intern. When something goes wrong at the company, everyone blames me. I truly feel so helpless. She painted herself as an exploited girl who accidentally stepped into the workplace, crying and timidly saying, I know Joanna is outstanding, and I deeply respect her. But she shouldn't have backed out last minute, leaving me alone to handle the reception. I'm new here, so it's inevitable that I lack experience, but I meant no harm. She sounds so pitiful. Is Joanna being too harsh? Isn't it inappropriate for an R.C executive to leave an intern in charge? Is the persona starting to flip? The barrage comments began to waver. Vivian lowered her head to wipe away tears, while her agent had already started posting articles portraying her as a fragile white moonlight. She knew that by steering public opinion towards Joanna fleeing at the last moment, even if she made mistakes in hosting, she could still win a wave of public sympathy. But what she didn't know was, this time I was waiting for her to speak up. I sat in the meeting room of 17 planning when my phone buzzed with a notification. Sean turned away from his computer and said calmly, she's live now. I nodded slightly. Time to shut her up. I pressed the pre-scheduled content release I had prepared earlier. 1 minute later, the entire internet exploded. Weibo's trending topics were instantly monopolized by me, forcibly claiming the top spot. Hashtag Joanna responds to intern backstabbing, publicly releases all project materials hashtag. The official account 17 Planning V posted 5 consecutive updates. Full audio recordings of project meetings. Screenshot of Vivian volunteering to take charge of project emails. Record of Vivian personally purchasing and paying for milk tea on the reception day. Documents of the reception process she submitted. Emails with Group D clearly stating our reception coordinator, Vivian. Each item must be stamped with a date. The most critical part? She was fully aware the other party had diabetes, yet replied in writing. Our R.C. group has made very innovative explorations in the direction of rejuvenation, and the hospitality will reflect youthful inspiration. Please rest assured. She wasn't unaware, she just assumed she could get away with it under the guise of innovation. The Weibo comment section erupted. What's with the tears? She was the one leading this, wasn't she? Damn, this evidence is as convincing as cheating. Joanna's going on a killing spree. Girl's not fighting back, she's doing forensic investigations. She's not the victim, she's the mastermind. You thought you were being an intern, but actually you're committing crimes. 3 minutes later, Vivian's livestream was banned for the following reason. Suspected of spreading rumors and defamation. The platform has received a real name report. 4 minutes later, the official account of 17 Planning posted another update. An additional piece of report material has been submitted to the police for investigation. Surveillance footage. Late one night, Vivian secretly photocopied the bidding documents in the printing room and mailed them by courier. Courier slip, sender's address, recipient, a competitor company in City Y. Her personal signature on the delivery receipt, stamped and fingerprinted. Meanwhile, chaos erupted in the RC conference room. Lucas stared fixedly at his phone screen, veins throbbing on his forehead. She's gone mad, he roared. She's gone mad? She even leaked the competition materials? Vivian had already been knocked to the ground, and everyone stepped back a few paces, as if she carried the plague. It wasn't me, I didn't mean to. She sobbed uncontrollably, they made me do it, they made me win against Joanna. Who? Lucas asked her in a low voice. Who made you do it? She choked back sobs trying to explain, only to see utter disgust in his eyes. Suddenly, she realized she no longer even had the right to be a human shield. Lucas pressed a hand to his forehead and spoke hoarsely, this can't just be about vengeance. She's trying to dismantle our entire conglomerate piece by piece. He stepped out of the meeting room and made a call. Take me to Ichi. I need to see Joanna. The other party hesitated, she gave instructions not to receive anyone from RC. I'm not from RC. Lucas growled. I'm her fiancé. As the words fell, the other end of the phone remained silent for a few seconds before replying. She did say that if you claim to be her fiancé, you're never to see her again. 17 Planning officially announced a 3-year long-term cooperation agreement with Group D. On the day the announcement was posted on the official blog, the reposts and comments exceeded 100,000. This is Joanna's true strength. She didn't resign, she just upgraded to a bigger table to keep winning. She didn't crash, she just switched cars. Meanwhile, Ichi announced new collaborations for 3 consecutive days, signing a brand co-construction agreement with Vision Media. Secured the overall planning rights for Z City's landmark commercial project and launched an IP collaboration with the cutting-edge design branding project. Projects that RC once struggled to secure are now being handed to me one by one. And Vivian, on the 4th morning of all this unfolding, was taken away by the police. The reason was leaking company bidding secrets and involvement in improper benefit transfers. She sat in the back of the police car, still clutching the live broadcast script that never made it to air. No live broadcast happened that day. But surveillance footage captured her mailing the documents and receiving money in full. She could no longer muster that pitifully delicate look she used to cry with. The media summed up her current situation in one sentence. From white moonlight to corporate mole, all in just 5 days. As for RC Group, it completely collapsed. Longtime shareholders liquidated their stakes, the board of directors lost morale, employees began quietly updating their resumes, and someone at the front desk handed in their resignation on the spot. The once bustling building slowly began to die. I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window on the top floor of Y7, with warm coffee and documents spread open. Sean stood behind me, whispering a reminder, Lucas is here. For the 6th time. Not seeing him. He said he's waiting for you downstairs. I flipped through some documents without looking up. Let him wait then. He said he'd wait indefinitely. Can he afford to wait? I gazed out the window and spoke calmly. This building, he once told me outright I wasn't qualified to enter. Now he wants to stand at the door waiting for me to give him a chance. Too late. Downstairs. Lucas stood at the entrance of each company, his shirt wrinkled, hair disheveled, and face haggard. This was the first time in years that he hadn't relied on a secretary or taken a private car. Instead, he stood on the rain-soaked ground, being looked up at from below. He had stood there all day, from noon until dusk. Some even secretly took his photo with their phones and posted it online. Former R.C. Group CEO waiting at Ichi's door to reconcile with the female CEO? Crematorium male lead confirmed. Another prime example of ground-licking literature. Did he regret it? Did she acknowledge him? No, she was drinking coffee. She lives brighter than anyone, he's stuck in the wind like a dog. The comments are killing me with laughter. Meanwhile, I sit in the office, flipping through R.C's public sentiment reports. One by one, Joanna isn't counterattacking, she's making a triumphant return. The entire internet owes her an apology this time. If she hadn't died once back then, would she be this ruthless now? No. If I hadn't died once, I'd still be laughing awkwardly in the break room, drinking with shareholders, and cleaning up others' messes. So thank you for that bucket of gasoline. It burned away the old me and forged today's Joanna, who no longer compromises. In the evening, the security guard approached Lucas to persuade him to leave. He said, Joanna has already clocked out. You'd better go back. Lucas raised his head, his eyes dull and his throat tight. Does she really not leave any affection at all? He asked. The Environmental Enterprise Annual Conference is the highest-profile annual summit in the industry. Hosted and funded by D Group, it brings together media, capital, and industry peers. 17 Planning was invited to deliver a keynote speech, with me as the main speaker. The night the announcement was made, it instantly trended on Weibo. #Joanna to make first public appearance #. #former R.C founder returns with new company #. She's not seeking revenge, she's rebuilding the throne #. The comment section went wild, this sister is the true female lead. I was still laughing when that guy waited for her to finish work. I'll be watching this speech live from start to finish, afraid I might miss a single word she says. Will she bring up the past? Will she name names? Waiting online for an answer. 5 minutes before going on stage. I was reviewing the script backstage when my assistant approached me cautiously. Joanna, Lucas, is at the door. Without looking up, I said, throw him out. He's kneeling. I paused my writing. Kneeling? Yes, the assistant swallowed hard. He said as long as you forgive him, he wants to apologize in person, even just a word would do. I chuckled. So he finally admits he was wrong? No. The assistant lowered their head. He said, his mistake was believing the wrong person, his mistake was not dealing with Vivian in time. From beginning to end, he never once said his mistake was betraying you. I nodded, that makes it even less worth letting him speak. The stage lights came on, and I stepped onto the platform. Below the stage, the media aimed their cameras like rifles, spotlights shining directly on my face. The live broadcast screens were being widely shared across the internet. I scanned the audience, my gaze flickering momentarily. In the far corner of the VIP section, a familiar figure sat in the most inconspicuous seat. Head lowered, shoulders slumped. Lucas. He really had managed to sneak in. Dressed in an all-black suit, he looked like a bronze statue covered in dust. The moment he saw me, his eyes suddenly lit up for an instant. Then, without hesitation, he stood up and walked to the edge of the stage in front of everyone, before dropping to his knees with a thud. He knelt before all the cameras, facing me. A collective gasp swept through the venue. The media went wild. Livestream comments exploded in frenzy. Did he kneel? Lucas knelt down? What kind of crazy plot is this? Workplace crematorium ML begging his ex? Please sis, don't forgive him. Mad dog licking the floor champion. Today's social death is on me. He fell to his knees, hands pressed against the floor, lifting his head to look at me with bloodshot eyes, like a wolf that had lost its territory. Joanna. His voice was unnervingly hoarse. I know I was wrong, I truly understand now. I don't need to return to her. I don't want anything else. Even being your assistant would be enough, just to pour water for you. I just want to stay by your side. I was wrong back then, I shouldn't have doubted you, shouldn't have stood by her side, shouldn't have left you alone to face all those things. Joanna, I've been calling your name in my sleep. I beg you, give me one more chance. I listened to every word he said, watching the hundreds of pairs of eyes in the audience and the rolling cameras on stage. Suddenly, I smiled. Picking up the microphone, I spoke slowly. What is Lucas saying? I can't hear very clearly. I'm standing too high to hear what you're saying on your knees. The room fell silent for a second before erupting into thunderous applause. Like a tsunami collapsing the roof of shame. So badass. I'm standing too high up. She wasn't talking about the steps, but about her perspective. Lucas is completely socially dead. Truly the queen of the internet, she's got it down. Watching this made me jump up on the spot, it's so satisfying. Lucas staggered, his face ghostly pale. He seemed to want to say more but found his voice hoarse and his limbs numb with cold. I stood under the lights, looking at him calmly. Your apology is worthless. He suddenly crawled forward on his knees, lowering his head as if about to kowtow at my feet. Joanna, I truly regret it. I've lost her. After what happened to her, I couldn't sleep night after night. Do you still hate me? I lowered my head and smiled. Lucas. You don't even deserve my hatred. He collapsed completely on the ground, as if trampled into the mud by the entire world. After the summit, Lucas completely disappeared. The company couldn't locate him, the legal team couldn't reach him, and even his custom-made Maybach had been parked in the underground garage for over 10 days without moving. Until someone found him near an abandoned villa on the outskirts of the city. Disheveled and sitting amidst weeds, he clutched a trench coat while continuously muttering incomprehensible words. Medical examination results indicated severe psychotic stress reaction, accompanied by acute dissociative identity disorder. The attending physician said helplessly, he can no longer distinguish between reality and hallucination. Meanwhile, I was on a plane, heading to New York. EG Planning is about to ring the bell for its IPO on NASDAQ, with investments from D Group and Shin Corporation, making it the fastest-growing unicorn this quarter. On the day of the ceremony, I wore a sharply tailored white suit, my long hair tied low, the pearl earrings on my earlobes trembling faintly in the light. The countdown reached 3 seconds, and the bell sounded. Dong. 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 At the celebration banquet, Sean raised his glass towards me with a smile. Congratulations, Joanna. Today, you officially become the youngest female founder of the new generation. I haven't thanked you yet, I said, looking up. He smiled and replied, if thanks are due, they should go to you. I raised my glass and lightly clinked it with his. A week later, I took my mother home from the hospital. Seeing the newly renovated courtyard, she couldn't hold back her tears. She laughed through her tears, saying, now you have everything, all that's left is getting married. I didn't speak, just lowered my head and gently touched a silver ring on my finger. It was the first piece of jewelry I bought with my own savings when I was 16. That was the year I first met Lucas. He said, the ring looks good on you. When you get married, you'll surely wear one like this. I looked at it, slowly took it off, and casually tossed it into the small fountain pool behind me. Whether Joanna gets married or not is not up to anyone to decide. Except herself. The ring sank into the water, creating ripples that spread out like a farewell never to return.